All right, howdy everybody, how's it going? Second day of LastCon. Last time I spoke at LastCon was 2011, something like that. It was a ways back. So it's good to be back speaking. I've been here in the interim. It's good to see all of you this morning. So this is a presentation that actually James Wickett and I created for RSA's Rugged DevOps track last year. And I wanted to give it here as well. I'm actively involved with the DevOps community here in Austin. I run DevOps Days Austin, which is coming in May. And James and I both blog together at theagileadmin.com. Who's been out to DevOps Days Austin in their life? All right, cool. Well, more of you can come this May. All right, so DevOps has changed my life, and I'm here to help share the understanding of the same lean techniques that have revolutionized development and operations and show how they can improve the effectiveness of security work as well. So in a recent book by Stephen Bellevin, Thinking Security, he points out that we're failing in our attempts to turn security spend into real security because we're spending our limited resources on the wrong things. Even when we have the bad guys outnumbered, they still seem to slip through our fingers, not necessarily through any skill of their own, right? So to talk about lean, real quick, I'm going to talk about Agile and DevOps first, just to, I don't want to assume that everybody knows what I'm talking about. But I'll go through those pieces reasonably quickly. Who here is familiar with Agile software development? All right. Who here works for an organization where they are doing, so, you know, at least some set of the people are doing Agile development? Okay, cool. That looks like just about the percentage I'm about to tell you. So most of you have probably at least seen Agile. You've seen it done right, seen it done wrong. There's more to it, but this is the core Agile manifesto. Agile's become widespread in the industry. Right, so 45% of organizations are using it on a majority of their teams. And why? Because it's provided clear benefits to software development organizations over the last, what is it now, 11 years since the Agile Manifesto was created. So DevOps, newer, right, starting around 2010. So even after Agile, we had a problem with development and operations being siloed and chasing opposing goals in the organization. DevOps was conceptualized as a way to correct that. Tom Limoncelli's book, The Practice of Cloud System Administration, says that DevOps is the application of Agile methodology to system administration. This is a definition of DevOps that we have on the Agile admin that a fair number of people have decided to agree with. So we're no longer really having conversations about whether or not DevOps is a thing. We're now talking about the rate of adoption, how it's quickly growing, and the kinds of benefits it's showing to adopting organizations. So Gartner, and I guess they'll tell us if their prediction was right here sometime soon, but they predicted that by 2016, 25% of global 2000 organizations would be making use of DevOps. Who here is in an organization that is in some manner doing DevOps? All right, well that looks like more than 25%, so you can tell Gartner they're on track. And why? So the Puppet Labs State of DevOps report, which was compiled by a data scientist, right? It's not just a random vendor thing, it's a real survey, shows that companies are getting orders of magnitude value out of DevOps, right? This isn't like, ooh, it's 20% better, right? It's huge multipliers in terms of recovering from failure and deploying more quickly. So that just sets a little bit of a background, and that brings us to lean. Who here is familiar with lean in some context? Manufacturing, lean software development? Okay, so some folks. Lean Six Sigma, I guess. Who here is a Six Sigma person? Oh, come on, it's an INFOSEC conference. There's got to be somebody into that. All right. What's an old certification? So what is lean? So lean started off by revolutionizing the world of manufacturing, right? It was pioneered by W. Edwards Deming and later popularized in the Toyota production system. But since then, it's been adapted to software development. Its practices include value stream mapping, waste, pull, queuing theory, human motivation, measurement and visualization of metrics, TDD, and we'll talk about a lot of those in the context of improving security work later in the presentation. These are the 7 principles of lean software development per Mary and Tom Poppendiek's book on the subject, Lean Software Development. So, kind of coming from the other side, Eric Ries also applied lean principles to product development in his book Lean Startup. Who's heard of Lean Startup? Yeah, it's a fad, right? Like actually, a lot of the benefit that Toyota got out of lean was they initially applied it to manufacturing, but they had very quickly moved to applying it to product development as well. So it's not like Eric Ries invented this, but he kind of popularized it and brought it to the kind of startup-y, computer-y world, right? And it characterizes the core loop inside the product development cycle as build, measure, learn, right? And then you repeat. And at the heart of it, lean is about bringing your effort to bear on the item with the highest leverage at any given time. So it gets confusing how these all fit together, but Matthias Marshall, I think, put together a great diagram here that shows how kind of lean product development, agile development, DevOps, lean, how you can think about it in one sort of overall picture. Because I know once you start talking about multiple kind of conceptual frameworks, it's like, what's all this about? So that's the just quickie version of what is lean, and we'll unpack it a lot going forward here. So what are the challenges that Agile, DevOps, Lean pose to INFOSEC? Who's worried about any of these and what they're going to do to your security life? Haha, you're smart enough to not raise your hand, because that's the wrong question, right? So if you look at every new innovation, whether it's lean, DevOps, cloud, social, mobile, whatever, if you only look at that through the filter of how is it a threat to security, then you're adopting a losing mindset out of the gate. You're always going to be reactive, right? So instead, we're going to talk about how adopting these strategies can help you win, how you can actually, these are not methodologies that are just for development or just for whatever. They have been proven to improve operational processes in everything from making cars to running e-commerce sites, right? So you can use these same strategies in your security work. And so I'm coming to you about this kind of because I've been there. So IT operations, I'll be honest, had stagnated in innovation for about a decade, right? And everybody knows it, right? When I started in 1993, right, at FedEx Corporate IT. And by and large, the same, Unix admin-y, bastard operator from hell kind of stuff that was being done in 1993, same shit that was being done in 2003, right? I mean, there had been very little innovation. And eventually, the industry got fed up with that. Like, part of the success of DevOps has been, it's cool, but part of its success is that businesses are finally looking at, the weird, troll techies behind the thing and saying, you know what, like, you can't just wave your hands and scare me anymore about the SAN. You need to do something that's going to contribute to the value of the organization, right? And that's a process that kind of all of us who were originally kind of caught up in the DevOps movement went through. And so I want to help you bring that same thing to security, right? Lean security is for winners. If later people at home with the video want to use this to green screen other videos on, that's perfectly all right. So the 6-fold path of lean security. I'm going to cover 6 challenges that are commonly faced by information security organizations and explain how you might be able to use some of the lean techniques to do them more effectively, right? And each of these is very similar to a problem that we had in ops, right? And seemed intractable before we found DevOps. I really appreciated the previous talk in focusing on, you know, how you communicate a lot of the human factor stuff. Like we bash our heads against the same problems day after day, year after year, frequently, right? And it seems like we don't make headway on them. And when that's the case, a lot of times there's another way to get there, right? Like, and that's how I felt DevOps was. It's like I had a team, Josh was on it, right? I mean, we tried to professionalize web operations, and we did all this stuff and came up with system development processes and bought great tools and all that, and it was still hard. It was still a pain in the ass. It still, in the end, wasn't successful, right? Like, our team was the bottleneck, right? You know, and finally seeing, hey, there's another way we can come at this problem was super valuable. So, number 1, security. It's just bean counting, right? Who's heard this one? Yeah. Right. Some of your arms are getting tired, but I'm pretty sure you have, right? So, so while all these criticisms aren't fair, they're also not completely unfounded, right? So this complaint is you're just there to check boxes. You're not really helping make anything more secure, right? In his book on browser security, Michael Zalowski has a great intro covering the history of information security, and he notes that at some point we decided that risk management was able to fill the development and operation gaps that we experienced, and so we became experts at structured inadequacy and wrapping problems with policies and accept the risk statements, all right? We traded engineering for actuarial duties, and the problem is that this doesn't create value. So let's talk about value. So the number 1 lean concept is value, understanding what is value. This is an example of a lean value stream map. And this is kind of your typical, you know, manufacturing sort of thing. And lean says, hey, focus on finding out what the actual real value add steps are in the creation of your product and service. Right? In lean software, they call this the concept to cash flow, right? It's like you have the idea, you develop it, you deliver it out to customers, you know, ideally you actually sell it and get their money, and then you get cash, right? So take a minute and think about, like, in your job, do you understand exactly what value you're creating and at what points in the creation of your product or service that it applies? Is it just a compliance checkbox at the end of the process? And where could you be creating more value? Everybody's value stream is going to be different per what sort of an organization they work in, right? So Johan Baker took a stab at kind of what lean value statements of a security organization might look like. And note that it hinges on creating a solution custom to your organization, right? So he wrote a lean security management white paper that I'm not going to read all the bullet points to you, right? But he's like, this is what creating value looks like for security controls. And one of the points here, you know, he kind of makes the point a couple times that it's custom, right? So one of the things that we really learned a lot in DevOps is, you know, whatever stock answers you got taught in ops school or security school or whatever, they're not necessarily the value that your organization needs from you, right? That value is extremely customized. So it's good that you're starting with an array of practices, but even the idea of, well, I know best practices, like that started to get frowned on a little bit because it's like, well, you know some practices that are good in certain circumstances, but if you're not cognizant enough of the circumstances in which you're applying them, you may not be doing the right thing. So here's an example. So years ago, I was working at National Instruments in engineering in the NI Cloud group, and we were making a FPGA compile cloud product, right? And this was a SaaS product where people would upload their FPGA designs and compile them, right? It's still online today, as best as I know. And of course, customers are uploading their pretty sensitive IP, right? You know, for FPGA sort of compilations. And so we aligned our security work with end customer concerns. So we were like, hey, one of the biggest impediments to customers uptaking this product is security concerns. So when we came up with a security plan, it was very focused on kind of not just doing some things, but communicating them, generating positive marketing messages about the security work that we had put into it, right? We've got a CISSP, and we've done threat modeling, we've done all this, and your data is yours, and this greatly facilitated adoption, right? So we never had any, like, people would be like, what about security? And we'd be like, here's the stuff we've done, and like, then it would always just go away. Like, we didn't have anybody not uptake the solution because of fears of security, right? And just like the point in the earlier talk about, you know, it's not your skill you're selling to somebody, it's the communication of it. We focused that security plan around what was actually going to create value, because anybody in an organization that thinks they don't have anything to do with sales or whatever, that is a dangerous attitude to have, right? If you're overhead, prepare to get your ass cut, right? Whenever sales are down. But your business is the health of your business. It's not locking down its data, it's whatever. It's the health of the overall business, right? So number two, security is a bottleneck, right? We're trying to get work done, and you're just slowing us down. We're like, oh, no, we're not. But Fortune magazine just reported this year that the average time to deliver corporate IT projects had increased from 8.5 months to 10 months in the last 5 years, right? And why is that? Security. I mean, the straight up answer was, oh, security. The growth of control and risk management functions that's too often poorly coordinated, resulting in a proliferation of new tasks in the areas of compliance, privacy, and data protection, right? So, you know, that is an additional 15% of cost delaying you making money, right? And that's a problem. So now we're going to talk about the second underlying principle of lean, which is waste, right? So the first one is value, second one is waste. And being sensitive to time. So I'll be honest, like, often security departments are guilty of squandering it, and other departments as well, right? So one of my favorite interactions of all time was with the purchasing department back at National Instruments, right? They had a guy, and he was great. I mean, this is the kind of guy, he would go into Walmart and he would come out with a discount on stuff he bought there, right? Like he was hardcore haggler dude, right? And so we'd try to buy some tool, you know, something that we needed to deliver a project, and he'd be like, I'm going to get that price down, but it's going to take as long as it's going to take. We'd try to put a timeline together. He'd be like, no, the lowest price or the highest security, right? That's the ultimate value. However long it takes to get there, that's how long it's going to take, right? The problem is that shows a profound ignorance of business, a profound ignorance, right? So I was like, dude, if you delay us by a month and save us another $5,000, this project we're trying to get out the door is called the $1 million project for a reason. Like, you are losing us money every day you haggle over that $5,000. You're gonna stop now, right? And you know, it's like, do the best you can. In this 2 weeks, we're gonna let you have to do it. So we're gonna talk about waste. So Lean talks about waste in a very structured way, right? So there are 3 types of waste: Muda, Muri, and Mura. The Japanese were big on early Lean, so there's a lot of Japanese words in here, right? So Muda is the one that gets discussed the most, although you might see how Murray, which is kind of unreasonable demand and overpressure, and Murrow, which you could say is lack of flow, also can come up in security's interaction with the rest of the organization. Muda has 7 forms. So I've got 2 slides. The 7 forms of Muda can be seen in security operations, and here's a couple security-centric examples, right? But the overall takeaway is analyze what you're doing and identify the areas of waste in it, right? So waste can be excess inventory, right? This is the here, developer, here's the 1,000-page PDF of vulnerabilities I got out of, I'm not gonna pick on Rapid7, but whoever, right? Like, here it is, go figure it out, right? Overproduction, so more security controls are not always a good thing. I know this blows your mind, right? But this is something that everybody has to learn. Developers have to learn, product people have learned more features are not always necessarily good. Developers have learned more code is not necessarily always good. Systems people have learned more systems, more complexity there is not always good. More security controls are not always good, right? If they are stemming from FUD or from misalignment with business needs, anything you spend time, effort, money on that is not the highest value thing you need to be doing is a screw up, right? So extra processing, right? Relying on compliance testing instead of designing security into the process in the first place. Handoffs waiting. I'm not going to read each one of these to you, but Muda is separated into 2 types. There's what's called type 1 Muda, which is necessary, like compliance, right? So it's necessary, but it doesn't add value. So value is your product becomes more secure, right? Type 2 Muda is just plain unneeded. So kind of something I urge you to think about is even if you're just focused on the necessary ones, do you really want to, describe your career when you go home for Thanksgiving as type 1 waste, right? Like that's not super inspiring, right? So you need to understand the waste that you generate. Now, zero waste isn't a reasonable goal, right? As everybody that's tried to follow whatever the newest arcane recycling regulations around here are, but it's a goal. And what Lean says is, hey, identify where you're adding value, identify where you're adding waste, so that you can then work on those. Frequently, it's just something we don't think about, right? We're just like, well, I got my job done, right? I delivered that 1,000-page vulnerability thing. I checked the checkbox, right? But that overall value stream map, that concept to cash flow, your company's successful is directly proportional to how fast you get from this end to that end. So if you have done things that make it slower, like take it from 8.5 months to 10 months to be able to get from here to here, right? That's a significant downside to your company. So it's not that you don't want to do security, but you can't just say, well, it's super important, so the waste doesn't matter, right? Which is, I'm going to be honest, an opinion I've heard, right? Number 3, security is invisible, right? So people are tempted to see security as a solution in search of a problem when they don't see how it fits into everything, right? And we're quick to say, hey, security is everyone's job, right? The problem is that's a pattern that has been tried and failed before, right? So in operations, performance, right? Performance used to be invisible, and we used to say it's everybody's job, right? And then no one did anything about it. And security has a lot of corollaries, I think, to application performance problems of 5 to 10 years ago. So in the performance field, there was actually a bit of kind of a revolution. Steve Souders, who helped form the Velocity conference, he was heading up the Yahoo high performance group. Who they had that problem, right? They're like, Yahoo, there's a crap load of groups doing a bunch of crazy stuff. We're the performance team. How are we supposed to do this, right? If we just tell everybody, make your stuff fast or try to put rules in place, like that's losing before you start, right? But also we can't do it for everybody. And that's exactly how most security organizations are formed in enterprises right now, right? So what they did is they stopped passing the buck around and started focusing on visualization, right? They started putting, it's like, hey, we'll put in browser extensions so you can see exactly what's going on. We're gonna share, research with you showing performance to revenue correlation. They had a great talk at Velocity where they got both Google and Microsoft to come out on stage and say, so we did experiments where we deliberately inserted 200 milliseconds of delay in our websites, and this is the revenue hit we took, right? Logs, conferences, essentially commitment to metric storing and visualization, right? And many of the same things are being done in security, but ask yourself, are you using them, right? So a lot of these things exist, but they're not, I would say, pervasive. And the trick is to share them with the people that are doing the work, right? So this is a lean principle. It's called see the whole. And it says that you are best able to create value when you have the perspective of what's going on in the overall system. And lean software development talks extensively about metrics collection and visualization. So you have to adopt a more open broadcast kind of mentality. So I know many of you got, whatever need to know basis, least privilege, or whatever beat into you in CISSP school or whatever it was, right? So you're gonna have to unlearn that to a degree because people do need to know. So if you want that development team to be motivated and put security into their thing, then they are the ones you need to be broadcasting those metrics to, right? Your whole, I'm gonna tell the important CIO, CEO, whatever guy, and he'll force everybody to do it. How's that working out for you? I mean, get a grip, right? I mean, that's not a winning, I've been at security events for a decade, right? And we're, as best as I can tell, we're in a worse state than we were 10 years ago in terms of overall security of our infrastructure, right? So you have to adopt that open broadcast mentality and share, right? Share and add visibility to the people who can actually make the thing secure. So visualize it so everybody can see it. Number 4, security is always too late, right? So there's a part of security that's inherently reactive, right? It's like there's a breach, you have to respond to it. A vulnerability has gone live into production. Oh, we gotta fix that. That's a Sev 1 defect, right? So Deming addressed this very early in Lean. So normally I don't read my slides, but I'm going to read this one. Cease dependence on mass inspection to achieve quality, improve the process and build quality into the product in the first place. I think Shannon maybe, or somebody had a quote very like this in a slide attributed to someone newer here at this conference, but this comes originally from Deming, right? So there's a lean software principle called build integrity in. So the more that you can create fast feedback loops, these are Gene Kim's 3 ways of DevOps, right? The more you can create fast feedback loops that detect and remediate security problems continually as part of your engineer's normal work processes, the less waste you generate, right? So if by the time a vulnerability has gotten out to production and you're like, oh, somebody needs to fix that, right? There's a huge amount of waste entailed in that. The developer who actually just wrote that code has moved on to something else. That bug may or may not get assigned back to them. It's gonna go to the product manager, get prioritized into a sprint, like a lot of handling, right? To get the same effect that if they had just caught that in unit tests the beginning. So something that I'm not going to dwell on because you've heard it in Lord knows how many presentations here, right, is integrating security into your continuous integration pipeline. I know Matt Tesaro has a great, much more elaborate presentation on this. Since James helped write this presentation, I am legally obliged to pimp Gauntlet while I do it. so as an example, and we all hear this go by, but I wanted to show a little bit of actual code so that you kind of get where it's going. So there's a syntax called Gherkin that's used by test-driven tools that developers actually use, like Cucumber and Robot Framework, right? And so Gauntlet basically uses that exact same Gherkin syntax, something that a developer is already going to be familiar with, right, to define in a BDD sort of way, security testing. And then as you run your continuous integration pipeline, you run you run scans, whatever, with a variety of different tools until the build either passes or doesn't. And this it provides continuous feedback at a very close point, not as close as like something even built into the IDE, which would be best, right? But still pretty close, and enables positive change with the least amount of waste. This is something even our QA department, right, at Alien Vault, where I work right now, they have focused on building more and more tooling even into the developer's IDE, because if you can catch problems like the second after they type it in, or when their IDE auto-saves, again, even waiting until it goes to a CI pipeline, like that takes a while and it can be slow. Our build takes a couple hours because of all the different platforms that it compiles down to, right? So workshop tutorial, James showed this at his talk yesterday as well, but if you want a whole hands-on workshop on how to implement this, there's that. These slides are already on SlideShare, so you can go back and check these out. So don't wait till the end. Figure out what could be done in conjunction with each of these value creation steps. So number 5, security. It's always in the way. So there's a fine difference between being a bottleneck due to constraints, but I think it's fair to say that in a lot of places, engineers consider security to be actively messing with them, right? I mean, has anybody ever had that reaction from people that they're bringing vulnerabilities to or whatever? It's like, you're just jacking with me, man. Like, it's a normal human reaction. And yes, and again, the previous talk had some great examples of how do you maybe communicate it so that you're not that guy. Don't be that guy. Nobody likes that guy, right? You already know you can't make things secure by yourself. You need everybody else to cooperate with you, but do you just anger them? So there's another lean principle called empower the team, right? So you need to understand human motivation. Netflix has had a brilliant solution to this problem. So it's funny, Adrian Cockcroft from Netflix spoke here at LastCon/AppSec, the year that it was both, right? And he was like, oh yeah, at Netflix we don't have any process, right? And I was like, holy shit, what did he mean by that? Like, that's because obviously that's not even possible, right? Like, you have a process, like your process might be crappy or whatever, but like there's a process. But what he meant was that they've made doing the right thing part of the systems that everyone uses. So there's perception that there's no process. So as part of Netflix's Simian Army, right? Folks may have heard of the Chaos Monkey. Who's heard of Chaos Monkey? All right, it's basically an automated thing that goes out and kills servers at random to make sure that everybody has built their applications to be resilient, right? They have a number of other monkeys. There's the security monkey and the janitor monkey. And what these do is, like, if you launch a AWS instance and it doesn't have the right tags on it, it just kills it, right? So think about how you normally address this. And I've done this, right? Running teams. So you're like, oh, we need people to start tagging these systems. Well, okay, so I'm gonna start generating a list of who's not in compliance. I'm gonna email it around. Okay, that convinced 20% of people to get their act together. Okay, now I'm gonna start emailing people individually. I'm gonna go around, right? I'm gonna go around with the clipboard, be like, hey, your things are out of compliance, right? And then You're that guy. People are like, oh, there's that asshole, with the clipboard, right? So Netflix, they said that basically what he said was, well, so we just built that into the system, so you tried to do it and it crashed, and all of a sudden, all of the emotional content dropped out of that transaction. So like you might think, oh, well, that would just make people madder or whatever. It's like, in terms of intrusiveness of thing you're doing, like automatically killing seems like it would keep going up here, but it didn't. It just dropped off because people are just like, oh, well, that's how it works, right? I mean, you only occasionally get mad at your cable box when because the channel guide sucks or whatever, but by and large, you're just like, oh, okay, like this is how it works, right? So automating that process removed the emotional charge, right? So it's also important to kind of be nice and pick your language and stuff like that. But self-service automation, that helps you build integrity instead of relying on mass inspection after things have already been done wrong. So number 6, security is perfectionist and therefore unrealistic, right? It's like, man, every time I talk to a security guy, they're like, well, if you don't have this and DLP and IDSs and newfangled WAF and all of this stuff, then you're just not doing it right, right? So here's the thing. Security is a product. It's like any other product, right? And all products have to make trade-offs about what they'll do and what they won't do, right? So if you listen to some folks, you can't do security without directly reporting to the CEO and having a $1.2 million budget to buy these 6 or 7 six-figure, security products that you need, right? But what if you can't get that, right? Or even if you can, many of those tools, they may not be a good fit for your particular needs, but also they take a long time to implement, right? I mean, God love all our vendors out there, but like a lot of those things, you buy them and then, you're talking reasonably a 6-month project with people to get it all going. So has anybody not figured this out yet? Mo money, mo problems. All right. So Lean Startup describes the solution to this efficiency problem, right? Rather than adding waste by doing long analysis cycles, implement something small and fast, analyze the results, and iterate. Often layers of a couple imperfect items yields better security than one perfect item, right? So it's very simple. If you've got X amount of money and 2 people on your security team, right? If you decide to spend that first 6 months just making the best IDS on God's green earth and not addressing any of the other aspects of security, like security is a weakest link problem, right? Has everybody heard that? Right? So you've poured a bunch of effort into doing this one thing great, and then you've left all the windows open in your house. Right? So you need to spread it out and iterate. Has anybody here ever been a product manager? Done product management work? Okay. So, I mean, it's product management. Like security is by no means immune to the same constraints, right? The iron triangle, right? From project management. And you have to use the same prioritization. You're looking for your best overall outcome, right? So I've recommended doing this with monitoring before. So to use a simple example, right? Monitoring. You set up a whole new system. You can do external synthetic monitoring, internal, you can instrument your apps, you pull metrics, you take their logs, you do all this stuff, right? If you look at the monitoring world, much like the security world, like there's a battery of 10 different things that you would put together to be a full end-to-end monitoring solution. So rather than pouring a lot of your time and effort on doing one of those huge and then another one of those huge, right? You iterate, get something in place for all of them, right? You need a little bit of credentials management, you need a little bit of network security, you need a little bit, instrument it, figure out which of those things you need more of, because again, security school doesn't mean shit to your company, right? Like, do you need more network security? Do you need, like, where are your threats coming from, right? So you just iterate, right? It's like, okay, I did basic stuff. Okay, these two areas need more attention. Now I'm going to buy something more expensive, put a little bit more work into it, stuff like that. Josh Moore did a good Lean Security 101 presentation in 2012 at an OWASP meeting that is worthwhile to look up. So DevOps realized that performance, reliability, deployment, all this was a product with defined customers and a need for active management and prioritization. It's the glory of the stack-ranked backlog, right? I mean, in the end, you know, and I've argued with managers about this, they're like, you've got 3 top priorities. It's like, no, like, it's bullcrap. In the end, you have a list. You have a stack-ranked list, and you do one thing, and then you do another thing. Maybe that's an explicit list, or maybe you're just making it up, but multitasking is a lie, right? Like, even in a computer, it's like, it's not multitasking, it's single tasking with context switching, right? So, you know, you have to do the same thing with security. Manage it like a product manager manages all the other aspects of a product. So, one of the reasons there's been a DevOps track at this conference since 2012 is because, you know, not so many years ago, we ops engineers were in the same situation and had all these same criticisms and problems leveled at us, right? Operations was, you know, at best invisible. You know, we were the bean counting bottleneck that, you know, was always a day late and $1 short. But adopting these lean principles has helped our entire industry begin to innovate its way out of that rut. And I'd recommend you check them out and see if they can help you in the same way. And now, I don't know why none of these other presentations do questions, but questions. That's why. All right, well, cool. Well, thanks for your time.